Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. It's Craig, Hiking Pipes. It's a beautiful, bright, sunny, early morning Friday here outside Baltimore, Maryland. And as it is Friday, smoking my Matches commemorative 673. Again, thank you to Eddie at the Pipe Nook and others who had come together to get these commemorative pipes from Savinelli. So, in it, smoking some McBaron Irish, not Irish, Scottish mixture. No, I'm not smoking Haunted Bookshop. Tried it, not crazy about it. Did smoke what I have, but not for me, really. So this morning, I think I'll tell you guys and ladies about my daughter's birth. So, my daughter, I only have one child, my daughter, and she's now 25, going to be 25 years old this year, next month. However, the story kind of goes, she was born on July 20th. And the night before she was born, so that'd be July 19th, my wife started to go into labor a little bit. She was starting to get some cramps and, starting to feel little things. But, we muddled through the evening. And then the very early morning of July 20th, probably around 5 o'clock in the morning, I was sleeping on the couch because she just was very uncomfortable and, tossing and turning. She came down and said, "You've got to start timing these contractions." So I did. And the contractions were coming about every 6-7 minutes or so. So called the doctor. And the hospital that we were going to was about 45 minutes away from our house. And this was on Long Island, New York. So the doctor said, "Well, if you want, you can get to the hospital, but I don't think there is a urgent need." Well, this was our first, again, only child. So, like any panicking parents to be, we went to the hospital. Got there about 7 o'clock in the morning. And my wife was somewhere around, 6 centimeters dilated, whatever that was. So, it wasn't going to happen immediately. And they put us into a room, hooked her up to all the machines and monitoring her heartbeat, the baby's heartbeat, all those kind of things. There's wires coming out everywhere. Now, a little bit of the backstory is the hospital we had gone to. We did a tour of the hospital. They recommended that new parents do a tour of the hospital just to get familiar with where things were located, what the hospital looks like. So it just wasn't a totally foreign experience once you get there. That was a good idea. And when we went through this tour, I was hearkened back to an older show called Mad About You. It was with Helen Hunt and Paul Reiser, I believe. And they were going to have a baby. And there was this whole thing, about episode where there was the hospital they were going to had what they call the good room. And it was a private room, really nicely adorned and so forth. Well, we went on the tour of the hospital. The hospital had these good rooms. And they were really nice. Wooden furniture. They had a huge chair that actually reclined into a bed, so the husband could stay in the room too. But the rule was that everything had to happen in that room. In other words, you couldn't just deliver a baby in one location of the hospital and then get into these good rooms. You had to do all the delivery and everything in that particular room. So we were very hopeful of that. Would have been a nice situation. However, when we got to the hospital, obviously the first thing we asked is, can we get into one of the good rooms? And we were told, well, since this is our first child, and the area where they had located us was a semi-private situation, they said, well, really all of the emergency equipment and so forth is all located in this other area where we were. And they recommended that we stay there because, again, this was our first child. Well, we were kind of disappointed because ultimately we would have to share a room with another person, and I wouldn't be able to stay with my wife. So we shrugged it off and said, okay. So fast forward back to where we were. We're going through the paces. She's hooked up to all these monitors, and she's not really progressing much. So they kind of gave her, a little medicine to relax her, to kind of stop the process, because she didn't sleep the night before. And again, things weren't progressing that heavily. So she was able to crash out for a couple of hours. Well, when she woke up again, she still wasn't very far along with these contractions. And, she kind of looked over at me, and now she's been in labor since the previous night. And she goes, I thought this was going to hurt a lot more than it does. Okay. As a guy, I have no appreciation for this whatsoever. So things were still not progressing with her. So the doctors came in and suggested that we start walking the hall. Sometimes they say when you walk, it helps the baby descend a little further and move things along. So we started to walk the halls. And as we're walking up and down the hallways, the contractions were starting to get worse. And after doing this for probably maybe half an hour or so, again, the contractions started to get pretty intense. And at one point, my wife had a contraction, and she ripped onto the rail and gripped onto my arm as, she's holding one of my arms as we're walking, and dug her nails really deep into my arm and doubled over in the hallway. And really had a lot of pain there, apparently. Me being the wise ass that I am, I looked at her, I said, "Does it hurt yet?" Remember what she said previously. Don't ever make fun of a woman who's in labor. They have no sense of humor. I got the daggerish look, if that's the word, that I've ever gotten from her. Didn't say a word to me. Just looked at me. I knew to shut up. Or thought I did. Anyway, so things were moving along. So we went back to the area, and they rehooked her up to all these machines, heartbeat and blood pressure and all this other stuff, beeping and chiming going on and stuff. And she got to 9 centimeters, and it started to happen. And then she got to her 10 centimeters. She was fully dilated. And she, started to push. Well, the doctor said that all the instruments and everything that she was hooked up to, all of the vitals are reading perfectly. There was no distress anywhere, anyhow. Her blood pressure was great. Her heartbeat was great. The baby's heartbeat was great. Baby's blood pressure was great. Everything was going perfectly. So they said that one of those good rooms was available. And would we like to get into one? Well, we kind of looked at each other and said, oh, yeah. Again, the rule of thumb is everything has to take place, the delivery and everything has to take place in one of those rooms. So, because we wanted that, it was like the Keystone Cops. In the middle of her starting to push, the doctor said, stop pushing. I have no appreciation for that, but I guess ladies who are in the middle of pushing, to ask them to stop at this point is quite a request. But she kind of reared back and stopped, and then they started to disconnect all of this machinery that she was hooked up to. And she's on one of these gurney type of beds, delivery beds. And the other room that we wanted to get to was way down the hallway in the far wing of the hospital. So I have our suitcase and the bag and the camera and all that other stuff that goes along with, when you go to the hospital to have your baby. And they're disconnecting all of this apparatus from her. And they start pushing her down the hallway at breakneck pace. I have the suitcase and this other bag with all the other incidentals, and I'm running down the hallway, following the gurney. We're almost running down the hallway. And they're pushing her frantically on this gurney type of bed. Well, got into the room. Amazingly enough, we got into the room. And got her situated in the bed that's in that room for the delivery. By this time, my mother and my stepfather had arrived at the hospital. And it's, like I said, we got to the hospital about 7 o'clock in the morning. Now it's about 10 minutes to 4 or so. So we've been at the hospital all day long. And now she's situated back in the bed in this good room, and they said, okay, start pushing again. It was really funny. So she starts pushing, and my wife is a very tough lady. She did not let out a scream or anything at all. She was just grunting as she was pushing. And my mother happened to be outside this door and heard what was, I guess, going on. And my mother poked her head in, and nurses say, get out. This is, private. So, slammed the door in my mom's face. Anyway, 3 pushes later, my daughter was out. 4 o'clock in the afternoon on the 20th. And everything was great. 10 fingers, 10 toes. You're counting all of this stuff, making sure everything is great. And so everything went fine, and got to spend the next couple of days in this good room, and it was really good to be there. I'm so glad we were able to have this happen. Again, they have this huge chair that folds out into the bed, so I was able to sleep there. Although you don't sleep with a new baby because they're bringing the baby in every 2 to 3 hours for feeding, and then of course checking, making sure that my wife's okay, taking her blood pressure, all that kind of stuff that goes on afterwards. But I just remembered the most vivid scene to me and recollection was us running down that hallway to that good room. And my wife is on that gurney and she's like, trying not to push, she's really sucking it in. And I'm just running like a maniac, carrying a couple bags behind her. It was a crazy time. But like I said, everything came out great. Daughter's healthy. She did have a high bilirubin count, which required her to go under some black lights for the couple of days that we were in the hospital. But yeah, that's the story of my daughter being born. So on this beautiful Friday, I thank you all for hanging with this story. Thanks for coming by. And as always, please be well, please be safe, and most importantly, please be good to one another. We'll catch you again very soon. Thanks again. Bye-bye.